Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest, reacting to another top 100 players in the NBA by ESPN, one of their lists, Riker. It seems like every year we end up making a reaction to one of these lists, and this year, usually we had guys on our roster, Lowry, who was constantly disrespected, DeMar DeRozan, a guy on this list, got really put in the doghouse, but so we'd usually be angry, a bit fired up, but this list was actually pretty good towards the Raptors players. We can sort of debate about the certain guys they put over the Raptors guys and whatnot, but overall, we'll dive into it. What are your overall thoughts before we get into the specific players, Riker?
Overall thoughts. It's the same reaction around the league, Ben, that there's a couple of players that absolutely jump off of the page.
Mm-hmm.
One is the guy known for jumping. Zion Williamson is extremely overrated in this list. I don't think that there's any spectrum of doubt. 19th best player in the league? What? That one to me is crazy. Lonzo Ball is extremely hyped up. He's ahead of I don't even know the kind of guy. What do you know what ranking is off the top of your
They
head?
put him about
He's
50. We might be looking down at our phones a little bit during this pod to look at the specific list. We'll have it
No, yeah,
linked in the
Lonzo
description
Ball's
of this video.
54, but he's ahead of Goran Dragic. He's ahead of Serge Ibaka. He's ahead of uh,
OG.
D'Angelo Russell. He's ahead of OG. That one's crazy. DeMar DeRozan is mad disrespect. He's 82nd. That means they have 81 guys better than DeMar DeRozan, who that one's completely disrespectful. And then there's a lot of upheaval about Zach LaVine. But you know what? At the same time, Zach LaVine, he's putting up big numbers on one of the worst teams in the NBA. So it's hard to put respect on somebody's name when that's all you're doing. I mean, he is ahead of, or he's behind guys like DeAndre Ayton, Christian Wood, guys that are also on sort of those bottom barrel teams. So maybe that is pretty disrespectful, but those are the ones that jump off the page. But this is mainly about the Raptors. And Ben, for once, Pascal Siakam, I think he's reasonably placed. Fred VanVleet is pretty high, actually, I think. Kyle Lowry is getting recognition. OG is up there. You look at guys like Bam Adebayo, who's like 11 or 13. That's way too high. But I think for the Raptors, it's pretty fair for once from ESPN.
Yeah, Siakam. We'll go player by player for the Toronto Raptors. Firstly, we'll go with our guys you mentioned. Pascal Siakam, ranked 24th on this list, and I think that makes sense given his bubble performance. Obviously, prior to the bubble, you and I sort of had him top 10, close to top 10, that sort of area. But when you average sort of 15 points per game in the second round of a series and you just really can't shoot, can't do the things that make you good, you're going to fall down a few pegs, especially when you're an unproven talent, unproven lead guy. So I think where he's placed right now does give the weight to where he was pre-bubble. All NBA second team player, a strong leader of a second seed in the Eastern Conference, but still takes into the count he didn't perform that well in his first postseason as the main guy. Given it's in a bubble, it's in the pandemic, he didn't seem happy as all the stuff has come out in his specific interviews coming back to training camp. So I'm sure he'll bounce back and he'll move up a bunch of pegs this season. But he was placed over, the big one I've seen online is he was placed over Kyrie Irving. Listeners of the podcast know I am not a big Kyrie Irving guy. I am not a fan of him. I think he's pretty overrated across the league. I think he's really fun to watch. I think he's really cool. But in terms of winning defense, he's really clutch as well. But I don't think he's an upper echelon guy. I would take Siakam over Kyrie Irving. Do you have any doubts in that one, Riker, or do you agree with that as I do?
It's a tough one. He needs another season under his belt, Ben, because Kyrie Irving is bouncing around the league right now. He's bouncing around the league as a guy who can lead a team. And of course, we saw what he could do in tandem with LeBron James. And then we saw his struggles in Boston. And then we saw him get injured pretty early in Brooklyn. So I think there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of overratedness around Kyrie. But then there's equally as much people saying that he's overhated, that there's too much disrespect thrown on his name. So I think as the same conversation you have with Pascal Siakam, they've both shown in flashes what they can do, but they need a full season to prove how good they are. And I think that both will probably take a jump up in their ratings.
Yeah. And another interesting one, I think we'll get into him after, Lowry at 30. Would you put, especially after the playoff performance, and as you said, the body of their entire careers, would you put Lowry below Pascal Siakam? Because he was clearly our best player in the playoffs this year and
Yeah.
clearly outperformed him. Obviously was the has such a body of work, continues to improve with this team somehow as he grows in age. I think that could be an interesting debate as well. Would you say Siakam's the best player on our team right now?
Pascal Siakam has to be the best player on the Raptors team. We can't settle for less. We're paying him $31 million a year. We're saying that this guy could have easily won that Boston Celtics series. Him playing abysmal. We brought it to game 7, and it was down the stretch that last 2 minutes. Had he made a couple of little easy hook shots, not even hooks, baby hooks, in the lane over a much shorter Jaylen Brown, shots that he was making all season long, it would have been no contest. And the Raptors, we're not going to get into it. We believe they could have beat the Heat easily, and that probably would have been in the Raptors' benefit to win a championship. But I digress, Ben. I digress. He is the number one guy on this Raptors team, especially moving forward. But I think Kyle Lowry has played in a way that his playoff performance elevates every season. And to put him below a guy like CJ McCollum or a guy like maybe even Brandon Ingram, especially Rudy Gobert, I think he could have been pegged up a couple of points as well. But if you look at regular season, maybe not.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I agree with the Ingram points and stuff, but I think he's fairly rated. Obviously, you and I watch him every day. It's a fair space to put Kyle Lowry, given his age, given he chills in the regular season a little bit, but clearly when the moment counts, he can turn it on, amp it all up. So I think Lowry is it's fair enough, right? It is what it is.
Fair enough, and that's better than the Raptors normally get, Ben.
Yeah, exactly. And Fred VanVleet is, we're going in sort of order in tandem, but Fred VanVleet was put at 40. In between Fred and Lowry was Russell Westbrook. I know that's sort of taken a lot of people back, given he averaged 27 points per game. You're shaking your head on the screen because obviously you're not a Russell Westbrook guy, but would you maybe put those point guards in order? Fred VanVleet, Russell Westbrook, Kyle Lowry?
Well, what are we considering? Are we talking great or are we talking best?
We're talking,
what
you're making
mean?
a list for top 100 players, right?
Well, what does top mean? Great or best? Good or production? Like wins or... Because what are we talking about here? Right? If you're talking about bottom barrel guys that put up points, then there is people that deserve to move up. Right? If we're talking about Russell Westbrook's fit on the Houston Rockets with James Harden, maybe he's fairly placed. But even for me, not being that much of a Westbrook guy, he's better than Kyle Lowry. He should be way higher on the list. So it depends on what you want from this list. But if we're putting Fred VanVleet down at 40, I think that's fair as well for a guy that's never been an all-star, that's only 6'1", that can't finish in the lane. He cannot finish a layup to save his life.
He can finish layups, just not over 7-footers. He can finish layups, not over.
He can't finish layups over anybody 6'5" or over, which is everybody in the NBA. Everybody from point guard to center.
Bro, you're bringing out the flames here. I'm surprised you were high on Russell Westbrook. That's the first compliment I think you've ever given him on the podcast. But
he's a great player. I don't think that we can argue his greatness. We can argue obviously his fit on certain teams and his ability to contribute towards wins.
Yeah.
But if you look at a guy at his position that can do the things that he does, his athleticism, his passing, his finishing, he is undoubtedly a better player than Kyle Lowry. But Kyle Lowry, his things that he does contributes to wins, contributes to playoff victories, contributes to bringing an average team to a great team like that. And that's why I'm questioning what we mean by top, There is an argument to be had.
This is for the clickbait, Riker. Russell Westbrook at 30, 36 or whatever. That's what that's for. Fred VanVleet obviously was put pretty high on this list. He was ahead of a guy, and this is another discussion. This is just getting into debate after debate, which makes it a good bit of content. You could honestly make some of these whole videos, but Fred VanVleet at 40, he was placed over a guy such as Victor Oladipo. They have been talked about in sign-in trades when Fred VanVleet was sort of coming and going, and obviously Prime Depot's a player that we sort of agreed on. His just shooting, finishing ability, athleticism, all that sort of stuff makes him in his prime a top 15, maybe potential top 10 guy in the league, but especially, I guess, considering his injuries, do you think it's fair that he was sort of put in this place above Depot at 40?
Oh, definitely. Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
Oladipo only played for a handful of games. How can you even adequately rate somebody like that?
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. And those, we brought up some of the big clickbaity-ish stuff that ESPN is trying to go for in this list, the stuff that will get the views, get the interactions, but I think the biggest one surrounding the Toronto Raptors is OG Anunoby, besides DeMar DeRozan, because he's still a Raptor at heart, but OG Anunoby placed at 68th, Riker. 68th, and this is pretty high for OG. He topped a lot of guys, and he's specifically one spot over D'Angelo Russell, who was obviously an all-star in the Eastern Conference last season. They put D'Lo sort of this low on the list. I know that's been a big thing people are talking about, D'Lo being behind a guy like OG Anunoby, who statistically wise shouldn't even be in the same conversation as D'Lo. I think you and I would both agree. OG brings a lot of different things that D'Lo can't really do to the game, but do you agree with this sort of listing in terms of what ESPN chose and putting him over a guy like D'Angelo Russell?
And this is what I think, is that somehow you exerted your influence over whoever made this list, because all of the things that you like about OG must have been what was put into consideration if it's not stats. And you've said this guy is an all-star, he's this, he's that, he's the next coming thing for the Raptors. And you're right. I mean, in terms of points and what they've achieved in the NBA, D'Angelo Russell has done way more. Montrezl Harrell this season has done more. Dennis Schroeder, I think, was a more effective player. DeMar DeRozan being like 20 points, 20 rankings down. I'm just looking at sort of the stat page here, the list. But Ben, I need to circle back to whoever made this must have watched some Raptors games. They must have saw what you've been seeing, Ben, because he is clearly has more potential than D'Angelo Russell.
This guy right here, Riker. This guy right here. He's taking to the next level next season. These guys at ESPN, they probably put him too low. You see this man's haircut. We're throwing a pic on the Instagram tonight. I gotta show the world this OG Anunoby looking. He's looking new and improved. He's bigger. He has more swag. And Nick Nurse has came in and said his mid-range shot has improved over this little bubble break. Both you and I talked about his handle, and Nick Nurse talked about his confidence being taken to the next level, running more actions for him, especially where Serge Ibaka, a big piece, focal point in the offense, is sort of gone. I think he's really going to take his game to a point next season which could potentially be an all-star. Potentially be an all-star caliber player. That might be a hot take. I don't know if you agree with that, disagree with that, but he's being put over.
I hope he doesn't.
You don't agree with that?
He's coming up for a contract extension. We want to keep his value low and then re-sign him and then let him become an all-star.
I see where you're coming from, but you can't just bottle up greatness, Riker. I want to see OG Anunoby flourish.
And we can capture lightning in a bottle. Let's do that for one season, lock him up long-term, and then let him go.
I think OG's getting paid regardless of what happens, because just from what he's done over the course of his career. But D'Lo is a guy that has been an all-star, gets a lot of points. You can't deny that. He led a Brooklyn Nets team to the playoffs. But defensive end of the floor, it's a big issue with D'Lo. He came into the league, people expected him to be more so of a playmaker than a bucket getter, but surprisingly, that really hasn't translated to a really high level in his time in the NBA. So he's a guy that he's electrifying. He has those visuals that are really fun to watch. He's got the ice in his veins. But I think OG's defense, OG's ability to play within an offense, and sort of space the floor / dunk finish, right? Obviously, once it gets put all together, that's where we see that sort of all-star, superstar level player. But maybe not superstar just yet, but all-star caliber player when it comes together. But I think even OG, where it's all sort of aggregated right now, I think that's a better player than D'Lo.
No argument here, Ben.
You agree or disagree?
I agree. I would rather have if we were losing OG and replacing him with D'Angelo Russell on the Toronto Raptors. It's not an improvement. You're not getting a better team.
Yeah, agreed. And would you say OG Anunoby's better than DeMar DeRozan as well? Because that's another guy that was put deep into this list.
No, not right now.
Interesting. So you're pushing for DeMar to be higher than 80th? 82nd, I believe he is.
Yeah, he should be an easy 81.
Over OG?
Listen, DeMar DeRozan, no. DeMar DeRozan, it's to his own demise that he has found himself ranked 82nd, and it's because of his refusal to develop his three-point shot. And if he was playing on the San Antonio Spurs and he is shooting a modest 2 or 3 3-points a game, would he have been ranked so low? Maybe not. Does it help his case at all that the San Antonio Spurs made consecutively the playoffs for 23 straight seasons, and then in his second season of playing on that team, that all of a sudden, still under Coach Popovich's leadership, that they don't make it anymore and they can't even defeat the likes of Memphis and New Orleans and Portland? No, that doesn't help him either. But ultimately, he's still a good player, and that is disrespect. And I think what he's done over his career and what he's still doing is better than what OG has ever done yet. But I still think OG has more potential.
Yeah, that's fair. And another guy that was sort of disrespected on the San Antonio Spurs, 95th on that list was LaMarcus Aldridge. A little bit surprising. Adequate. Yeah. Wait. What'd you say?
Adequate. That's fair.
He's still a bucket getter. His stats kind of went down, but another big name, I guess, down low on that list. But I'd agree.
Or would you rather have LaMarcus Aldridge or Jarrett Allen right now?
I'm a Jarrett Allen guy. So
he's adequately placed.
Yeah, fair enough. But DeMar DeRozan should definitely be higher in terms of his ability to score. He's just on a really bad roster, bad fit for him. Obviously, he re-signed there. And in 2021, Riker, we made a video on the Raptors risking it all for 2021 free agency. Maybe it was for a return of DeMar DeRozan. Would you be interested in that?
No, Ben. No. No! No! No. No is the answer. It just gives me flashbacks of pain and playing majority of isolation basketball in the mid-range, the least efficient shot in the modern NBA, as we all know. It makes no sense to bring the team back to that, to bring us back to the dark ages, to the stone ages, but I still want to have respect for him as a player, just not as an NBA Toronto Raptors player.
Yeah, fair enough. And he's too low on this list. I was hoping DeMar would get picked up by the Lakers this offseason. We kind of touched on that a couple podcasts, but definitely always a bit of fun sort of breaking down these subjective lists. You can sort of point out the points where they're looking for clickbait, looking for all that sort of stuff. But you guys are the best for making this far. Check out the Twitter, the Instagram, all that cool stuff. Check out the Raptors Digest website at raptorsdigest.ca. We'd really appreciate that. Got a lot of cool articles going up there. Pretty well 2-3 a week, so definitely
often.
Yeah, often. And they're only going to get amped up. So yeah, we really appreciate you guys. And yeah, Riker, any last words?
We got to start plugging that at the beginning of the podcast. So if you've made it this far, that you're hearing our plug to our Toronto Raptors, raptorsdigest.ca, make a comment. Just say raptorsdigest.ca. Maybe a couple people will see it in the comment section. That's my plug.
True. And leave some comments on the articles too. I took a long time to sort of code in there and build out. So I'd like to see more people leave some comments on raptorsdigest.ca. If you do, we'll give you a little shout out in the next video. So
hey, cheers to that.
Do that.
And cheers to this video. Cheers.